that all right? And of course, at the center of that is a mosque, meaning at the center of all of this kind of ministry work, government work, administrative work, management work, dialogue work, it has a solid spiritual center and core that God is the foundation of all that we do. And a mystery God, a spook God ain't going to help you to build nothing like this. We're talking about a real God, a living God, a God that's a man. We're talking about the one the Honorable Elijah Muhammad represented to us, the one that was his teacher. We don't want no other God. We want the God that taught him. We want the God that raised him. We want the God that showed him how to raise us. We want the God that knows how to take care of our enemies. That spook God didn't do a good job at protecting us against the enemy. So we reject that God now. We want a God that got power. Next slide, please. See, this is interesting. The fall of America and our rise have the same cause. The same God that's causing one to fall is causing the other to rise. That's how you get a great and a dreadful day, because they're joined. The fall of one is the rise of the other. Next slide. Can you see that? See, that's the mother plane, or that's an artist's depiction of the mother plane. See, this is bringing about the destruction of our enemies. God ain't playing with our enemies. See, he's not operating from a position of weakness. See, the scared to death civil rights leaders, they want to forgive our enemies. They want to cry out, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Oh, yes, they do know what they're doing. But these kinds of leaders, they're just so cowardly. And some of us are so cowardly, we want to forget. We want to let bygones be bygones. Let's forget all the lynchings. Let's forget all about slavery. Let's forget about all the suffering of our people over all those centuries. Let's let bygones be bygones as long as I can get a job and a sandwich. But this God that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is representing, he ain't going to let bygones be bygones. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that this modern Pharaoh is like the old Pharaoh. He said, God always intended on killing Pharaoh. Always intended on killing him. And he got the instrument of destruction to carry it out. It's not an idle boast. And think if you were the enemy and you looked up in the sky every day and saw this, knowing that this is the sword of Damocles that's there to cut off your head. Next slide. Everybody all right? Next slide, please. See, now, the engineering of our rise, in one sense, was with the Million Man March and the Million Family March, and then the 10th anniversary commemoration of the Million Man March. Because the Million Man March signaled the time when all of our people were united around the divine leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Where the message had been delivered into every nook and cranny and had mobilized an entire people when they heard the call of God's man in their midst. And they assembled in Washington, D.C., and they shut down the government. Shut it down. Because according to the law of physics, no two objects can occupy the same space at the same time. The one that is larger in magnitude will always displace that which is lesser. So the government of God coming in, even in its infancy, outweighs the government of America. So the Congress shut down, the president left town, the Supreme Court adjourned. And they can only come back in session when the minister led the 2 million men home. I wonder what would have happened if he had decided to stay one more day. They would have had to stay adjourned one more day. If he decided to stay 10 years, they'd be in adjournment for 10 years. See, some of you looking at me like I'm crazy. But go back and look at what actually happened. I'm not making it up. And some of you were actually there. You actually witnessed this. They had to shut down. So letting you know, this is just a sign to let you know that when we rise, when we stand up and be ourselves, we shut them down automatically. We ain't got to fire a shot. Just stand up and be men. Just stand up and be women. And speak what God has taught us to speak. Next slide. And we took care of these are the spiritual qualities. This is the spiritual kind of work. This is, in one sense, we talk about the reorganization and restructuring of the Nation of Islam, but before that can take place, we need the restructuring of our minds, of our hearts as individuals. That's what atonement is for. That's what reconciliation is for. That's what responsibility is for. It's a restructuring of us as individuals. Then when that restructuring is taking place among us as individuals, then we can get on with the bigger things of building these ministries, of actually building the nation. Next slide, please. Is everybody all right? So we need these 9 ministries. This is our work of atonement. We can't get right with God until we build these ministries. We can't get right with our people until we build these ministries. We can't get right with one another until we build these ministries. But we can't build them if we're in the wrong state inwardly. If our hearts are not what they need to be, if our minds are not what they need to be, if we don't know the science of dialogue, if we don't know the science of management, then we can't build these. Or if somebody gave it to us ready-made, we couldn't operate it. So that's why these classes are taking place, to bring about a transformation in a people so that they will become qualified to do the work that God has given them to do. Next slide. And all the task forces as well. See, there's something up here for you, black man. There's something up here for you, black woman. There's some area of interest here. Or if it's not here, one day you'll put it there. If we left something out, you'll put it there. You say there's something missing in that constellation, and you'll put it there. But this is our work. This is our mission. There's a role, there's a place for every last one of us. But we've got to qualify ourselves for positions that await us. Next slide. Everybody all right? And then when we have that, then we will have a dialogue of ministries. And that dialogue that takes place among the ministries themselves is what we will call government. Dialogue at the highest level. Next slide. So what are we doing? We're making his word bond. We're trying to understand what he had in mind for us to do. Sometimes when you're immature, like a child, you don't quite understand what it is that your parent wants you to do. You're doing something that you think is what they want, but as you mature in your understanding, then all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute. I was being childish. I was being silly. I was taking what they wanted me to do as some small little thing when in fact it's great and it's magnificent. And I've got some more growing to do. I've got some more development to do, because as I am, I can't handle the great vision that they have in mind for me to do. And so making his word bond means that we have got to come into a deep understanding, a deep familiarity with everything that Master Farad Muhammad taught his servant, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We have to become the master of it, first by committing all of the lessons to memory, committed to memory, so that we can recite it by heart. But it doesn't just stop there, it just begins there. Then we've got to internalize it into our character and make it a part of us and enter into a dialogue with that which he revealed to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And then as we dialogue on his teaching within ourselves, bringing forth out of ourselves the sum total of our life's experience and the meaning of our life as a filter through which the supreme wisdom gets displayed. Then, in dialogue with one another, we will literally build a new world, a new civilization, a new beginning. The hereafter for my followers is now. Somebody say, I hope I make it to the hereafter. You already made it. You're already here. Why are you putting it off somewhere? You're already here. But you're a pioneer in the hereafter. You got a whole lot of trees to cut down. This ain't the finished product yet. We're just getting started. We're just rolling up our sleeves. But make no mistake about it, it's here, it's now. Next slide. See, that lion is still in the cage, and you wonder why. Because he already found the door. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the door. The Honorable Minister Farrakhan is the door. You done found the door. So what you still doing in the cage? Acting like you can't go nowhere. Acting like you can't do nothing. What is wrong with your thinking? Maybe you have gotten so accustomed to your cage. Like a man being locked up for a long time, and now the gate swings open. He's free to go. But what's wrong with him? He's been confined so long, now he's scared of freedom. He's scared of responsibility. He's looking out at the world and he doesn't know whether he can confront the world. So I'm talking to the lions now. See, you in a cage. Now what you gonna do, lion? You gonna stay in that cage and pretend like you still locked up? Imagine that you're still locked up. Make excuses like you're still locked up. You're not locked up anymore. The door is wide open. So as they say, the ball's in your court now, lion. You gonna go through the door? See, that's the topic of dialogue, isn't it? All the lions need to get together and start dialoguing. What we gonna do about this open door? Find out the ones that's ready to go and those that want to stay behind. Next slide, please. Then with modern equipment, see, we can go 50 times faster. See, that's what dialogue helps you do. Go faster. That's what management will help you do. Go faster. 50 times faster means you will do in 1 week what normally would take 1 year. Do in 1 year what would normally take 50 years. Do in 50 years what would normally take 2,500 years. I don't know about you, but I ain't got a whole lot of time. I ain't got 2,500 years to build a civilization to live in. If I follow how to eat to live, maybe I got another 50 years. And if we work with modern equipment right down to the modern times, maybe we'll build a whole civilization that I will actually live in. That you will actually live in before we die. And have something worthwhile to bequeath to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But we're not going to get it moving at this slow pace. 50 times faster. So we're getting ready to move towards questions and answers and the demonstration. This is just to remind you of the rules of communications, the rules of dialogue, in other words. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read through them. You are already familiar with them. Next slide. Now, this is, again, the formal structure that you're familiar with. The 9 roles in dialogue. Actually, if I had to make this slide over again, I would add a 10th one. At the bottom there, I would put the audience. The audience. Because sometimes there's too many people to put in an effective dialogue circle, and there's an audience. Or suppose you were a government official. Suppose you actually were a ministry official, and you were meeting in some official capacity. Well, don't you realize that the whole rest of the nation that you are representing is an audience? They're sitting somewhere watching or listening or expecting some report that comes out of your meeting. They're the audience, and guess what? They sit in judgment of the dialogue. And you don't want them to think that you're wasting time, that you're not taking care of the nation's business. You want your audience to be pleased. A cheap example would be the dialogue of a play that's on stage. And there's an audience out there, and the actors that are in the stage play, they're reciting their lines and they're trying to play their roles as best they can so that at the end of that drama, the audience will stand up and applause. And they say, we got a standing ovation because we gave a moving performance, a moving portrayal of the drama that was based on dialogue. Well, that would be like a dramatic presentation in the theater. Well, in one sense, what has the Honorable Elijah Muhammad done for us? He has put us on the stage of world history, where he has given us our lines, given us our dialogue, given us our wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that we are to use in a mathematical way in order to work out our life's drama. Does that make sense? Can you see that? It's not make-believe. It's reality. The teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad come to a people who have been taken out of history, and it brings them back into history so that they can live life for real and not in a fantasy, but in a real sense, making real progress. And they're successful when they make for themselves a real heaven while they live. Next slide. So don't forget about the audience that's watching you. We covered this last time. The key role out of all of the roles that I would say is indispensable for any type of dialogue. And when we are able to offer the advanced courses in dialogue, we'll show you many different ways that dialogue can be set up. But in all of those various forms of dialogue, the key function, the key role is always the facilitator that makes it happen. Even when it's informal, there's somebody that is actually performing that role of facilitation. Actually, when people are really experiencing dialogue, more than one person is facilitating. A lot of people are facilitating. Everybody is trying to make it happen. Nobody is resisting. Nobody is holding back. So in that sense, all become facilitators. And that's the best and highest level of dialogue. But I want to point this out. You notice in the previous slide, you didn't see anything up there that said the leader of dialogue, right? You didn't see that, right? See, some of us go into dialogue with this attitude like, I'm the leader of this. No, you're not. Let the dialogue lead you and everybody else. There ain't nobody the leader in a circle of dialogue. Everybody is equal. So don't go into the dialogue circle like you're going to run this. No, it's not an instrument of your ego. It's actually an instrument of the divine nature of God. So what should you do when you are in the presence of the divine nature of God? Submit. Next slide. Is everybody all right? So what we are trying to produce in the Nation of Islam, growing circles of dialogue. So now the monologue comes to an end. And the dialogue begins. Don't worry about your inexperience or your flutters. That's normal. That's normal. That's what we call the crisis in dialogue. The crisis comes about in dialogue when it's your turn to speak. That's the crisis. But it's a normal part of it. And that little flutter, that little nervousness, that little almost anxiety kind of feeling that you get, see, that's part of it. And that's what keeps you honest. Because what that means is that you really care about what you're getting ready to say, and you don't want to mess up, and you want it to be understood, and you're trying real hard. Then when you feel that, then just relax. Just open your mouth and speak, and everything will be all right. And don't worry about, see, let me confess. See, every time I have to stand up and speak, every time that I might be in a dialogue meeting, you know what I'm afraid of? Sounding like a fool. That always crosses my mind. I might get up there and sound stupid. I might say something and everybody will start laughing at me. See, that's what goes through my mind every single time. And any public speaker who's honest and who is not just faking it, but who's really speaking from the heart, they'll tell you the same thing. Maybe in their own words, they'll be a little bit different, but they go through that kind of crisis. Well, I don't, what am I going to say? I don't know how to say it. It might not come out right. But that's the crisis that is in dialogue. And that's why it requires what? Courage. Courage. Because it is your courage that will drive you through the crisis so that you will say what you need to say. And guess what? You will not sound like a fool because that's not what you are. You won't fall flat on your face because that's not what you're here to do. You will say something and you won't be the judge of it. The people who hear you will be the judge of it. And guess what? They'll get something good out of what each and every one of us have to say, as long as we're speaking from the heart, speaking from ourselves and from our life's experience. Okay? Let's see, one more slide, I think. Yes. So it's been a pleasure and an honor to have participated with you over these 5 weeks with deliberative dialogue. This is just a beginning, but it's a great beginning. And I thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the opportunity and for the trust that he has given me to allow me to come before the people who came to follow him and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. See, there's no greater honor that can be given to a person, and I'm humbled by that, and I do not take it for granted. So I hope that you have been pleased, but I'm more concerned about whether the minister is pleased, and of course whether the messenger and Allah himself are pleased with what we are attempting to do in their names. So one of the great things about these classes is, as I travel around the country, different places, I do get some feedback, and some people do send me emails, and I really, really appreciate the feedback, because you have no idea what it's like to stand in front of people that you do see, and then you know there's thousands more that you don't see. They're out there in cyberspace. You know, and you have no idea what impact or lack of impact you're having on people unless they tell you, unless they do what? Dialogue back with you, give you some feedback. And so I would really appreciate it. For example, a sister sent me an email last week. She said, the lesson doesn't say set yourself in heaven. It says sit yourself in heaven. So I appreciate that, because that was a typographical error on one of the slides. Okay, so mistakes shall not exist. Why? Because the sister gave me some feedback. Say, you messed up. Get it right. Unless you got lessons that are different than the rest of our lessons. So you stand corrected, right? So that's how we perfect the nation. So don't feel like you have no part in this. No, you have a big part in it. So please go to atonementcommission.com, and you'll see a button there that says feedback. Just click on it and just compose your email message, and that will be sent to me or to Brother Michael or whoever it needs to go to, okay? Next slide. I think that's it. Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Okay, you can turn off the slides. And do we have the questions and the topics? Do you have cards? Did you get cards? Oh, sister collected them? Okay, I think what's supposed to happen now, they're supposed to bring them to me. Okay, all right. Oh, Brother Michael has them. Right. Do you have the questions?
No. Well, they can be either one.
Oh, that's a lot of writing, sister. She composed a book here. Okay, well, let me just read. I can't take the time to read all of them, but let me just read some of them, and then let's decide which one we might want to do as a demonstration. Okay, how do we move from mosque to nationhood? That's a good topic, right? So let me set that one here. What is the difference between a pseudoscientist or bean soup scientist and a real scientist? Ooh. How do you dialogue with a person whose thoughts are one-sided and sees no fault in self? Okay. That's a common problem, isn't it? How do we, meaning Nation of Islam, establish our own strong, independent government with our people? Okay, well, I think we have been dealing with that. How do we begin to mine out of the people that which Allah has brought to the nation, the treasures that Allah has placed in them to further our progress, without favoritism and with equality. Well, that's a well thought out topic. How can we deal with marriage under trials and tribulations to make it last and not lost? Okay. Oh, these are questions. Dialogue about vaccinations. Are vaccinations good for our health? I would like to dialogue about our rise. Dialogue with lost found Muslims. Why did Allah hate Esau and love Jacob? Okay. I heard a very serious discussion regarding the reduction of Iraq, Iran, and Syria to ashes by Israel just after New Year. Do you have some advice or thoughts regarding the above? Could we touch on this, on it? Increasing our efforts to get this word to more of our people and bringing them to the mosque. So, no shortage of topics. And the reason I'm doing this like this, even though it may seem a little tedious, is because this is an important part of the dialogue process. Being careful about how you put together the topic. As a matter of fact, if you were a group of people, who wanted to convene a dialogue, maybe you would have what you could call a preliminary dialogue to fine-tune the topic, to make sure that the topic itself was representative of something that interests the whole group and not just an individual. Okay? So, well, I think these two here might be concise enough to sort of make a stab at in a brief period of time. The one that goes, how do we move from mosque to nationhood? Sort of short, to the point. Then there's another one, how do we begin to mine out of the people that which Allah has brought to the nation, the treasures that Allah has placed in them to further our progress? So those are two pretty good ones. Could I have a show of hands? How many would favor the first one? How do we move from mosque to nationhood? Could I just see a short show of hands? Okay, this might be close here. And the other one, how do we mine out from the people the gifts that they bring to the nation for the progress of the nation? Okay. Well, I think it's pretty clear. The first one got the majority. Okay, so that's what's going to be our topic. Now, can I have Brother Michael, Brother Ishmael, Brother Aziz, Sister Kim? Courage, courage, courage. Can we have one or two volunteers? Okay, brother. What's your name, sir? Johnny. Brother Johnny. They have a volunteer, Sister Adrian. Could you come up, please? Or those that I mentioned. We're just going to stand here. Just come up, please. How many do we have? That's one sister. We need another sister, I think. Sister Roberta. So this is real informal. This is real spontaneous. We didn't rehearse anything, did we? You didn't know any more about this than me. I just knew we were going to do a demonstration, but we didn't have a topic. Where's the other sister? Come on out here. Come on out here. Yes, everybody comes front and center. Okay. So how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I won't participate in the dialogue. I'll sort of be facilitator. Okay? So since this is informal, one more sister. Do we have another volunteer? Courage. Yes, ma'am. Come forward. Come right down the center aisle, sister. Let's take the short way. Let's do the shortcut. What's your name? Sister Natalie. Okay. All right. So we have Sister Natalie, Sister Roberta, Sister Adrienne, Brother Michael, Brother Aziz, Brother Johnny, and Brother Ishmael. Okay. So I'm going to be the facilitator. And does somebody have a watch? Who has a watch? You have a watch? Okay. What time do you have? 5 minutes of 9. So why don't we set aside 20 minutes just for the demonstration, and then we'll still have a few minutes after that because I think we're receiving questions from around the country. So in 20 minutes, let's be realistic now. We're not going to resolve this topic, but we can make a beginning at it. So let me, just at random, I'm going to ask Brother Michael, I'm going to ask Sister Adrienne, and I'm going to ask Brother Johnny. I want the three of you to speak for 1 minute on the topic. Let me repeat the topic. How do we move from mosque to nationhood? How do we move from mosque to nationhood? Sister Ruby's going to be our timekeeper, and she'll give us a signal when your 1 minute is up. When those three have finished their 1 minute presentations, then everyone else can join in, and you can make a comment for 30 seconds each. And we'll just keep it going as long as the time will permit, okay? And if we arrive at consensus, I'll be the most surprised person in the world, but here it goes, okay? So she has the microphone, so she goes first.
I'd first like to define mosque and nationhood. To me, mosque is the womb where the individual has an opportunity to be retrained and to cultivate, and a collection of those same types of people comprise a nationhood. So I believe that we can move from mosque to nationhood in coming to our classes and studying and in ingesting the information that we're given and practicing, such as learning deliberate dialogue, practicing it so that it becomes our lifestyle. And then as we connect with others of like minds, that's how we move from mosque to nationhood.
No. There's no applause or crowd noise, as it would be called, until the play is over. But you reserve your critique until the end. That's the last part of dialogue, is a critique, okay? So, brother, she did it in what? 50 seconds, see? Okay, Brother Michael, I think you...
Mosque to nation. I think that was a very good description of the role of mosque. When I think of nation, I think of more functions. So nation to me is, I would look at mosque as a seed, and I would look at nation as the tree. And so the everything that will eventually be a part, grow into a nation, will come out of the development of people that takes place in mosque. But nation and mosque are like a oak tree and an oak tree seed. So nation has more express functions. For example, there may be someone here who knows agribusiness, agriculture. There may be someone here who knows law. There may be someone here who knows education. But in this context, where there's a message being delivered and the person's being cultivated and developed, this context is for the purpose of development.
Okay. Would somebody tell Brother Michael what an oak tree seed is called?
What, a walnut?
An acorn.
Ah, see? Thank you.
First, I think if we begin with recognizing the mosque as the whole world, and that Allah has come and given us the lessons which brings out of us through deliberate dialogue whatever is in us and the qualities of Himself, and we begin to express it, we can be reformed the world, because it's people that are composed of the mosque, and that will give us the results of bringing in a new heaven on earth.
Okay. So we heard from our three presenters, you could say. Now, as the facilitator, see, I have big ears, right? Yes, sir. So I heard that Brother Johnny doesn't agree with Brother Michael, because Brother Michael seemed to say that the mosque is a limited context, it's like a little seed. But Brother Johnny, he started out saying the mosque should be the whole world. So now, why don't you respond to he's disagreeing with you? So Brother Michael, what do you say to what he just said?
Bah, humbug. No, I'm just kidding. That's garbage, brother. No, that wouldn't be lawful dialogue. I would agree. I think they're just different levels of looking at the same thing. So when I said mosque, I'm referring to this physical structure. But then there's a mosque that belongs to the original man and woman, which is the entire planet. And in that mosque, there's knowledge that surrounds us all the time. But because we are in essence brain dead, as a people, when we move around in this universe, we're not learning what we should from it. We could actually observe nature and get the same principles that we get from the rostrum just going up and down the street, but we're mentally dead. So we walk up and down the street and learn nothing. So we had to come to the mosque to hear about what we could have observed had we been wide awake.
Would you like to respond again?
Yes, I would, sir. I agree too. And the mosque, in the limited circumstances of a building, is a place for the repair. And I agree. And it's furthermore, as he speaks about spreading the dialogue, that's where we're in that phase of development from the mosque to the larger community.
Okay. Now, teaching point, you see, now if we had more time, maybe I would facilitate more dialogue between those two or different varying points of view between those that made a presentation. But since we don't have a lot of time, even though there's still some open issues there, we're going to move on and we're going to open it up to the rest of those who are here before us. So, Brother Ishmael, how would you respond to what these three have said?
What did you say earlier? The topic or the question to me comes out of our present state of mind and perception. In the supreme wisdom, we don't have a mention of mosques. Allah declared us a nation. And so I believe, as it has already been stated, which I'm in agreement of, mosque then becomes the nurturing ground or the spiritual center for the cultivation of us. And if you look at one of the root meanings of nation, it means to be born into. So it is that we have confined ourselves to the mosque when it is a whole nation. So I don't see, I think it's based on our perception and state of mind, but Allah declared us a nation, not a mosque. Lost, found nation.
Okay, now for this part of it, remember your comments should be 30 seconds, all right? So we're gonna go in this order. You're next, Sister Roberta's next, then Brother Aziz. And then everybody can get in.
Okay, I also would agree that the mosque is the basis of our spiritual self. And a nation, the nation that we're the nation that Allah has come to us to establish is the kingdom of God. So if we are not spiritually grounded from our mosque meetings or our gathering of believers, then our nation will not be built on what its true purpose is.
I feel that a mosque is the place for someone to renew themselves and to get an understanding